Hey, welcome everybody. We are live with the Mass and Fabric user group. We're going to be talking with Shabnam, who's going to be getting started working in Microsoft Lakehouse. This is a live and in-person event in the Madison offices, so we're primarily going to be focusing on questions and Q&A in the room. But if you want to get questions to Shabnam, you can do that as well. You just have to drop those questions in the chat. I will field them. Just one rule. Please prefix the question with the Q, and we will get that queued up for Shabnam to get that answered. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Shabnam. Where'd she go? Hey, there she is.
All right, we're back. Hey, everyone. Okay, let me share my screen and then we'll get started.
Fantastic.
One moment. All right.
Oh, that's not what we want.
All right, Chris, do we have the screen as well?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, hello everyone. Thank you, Chris and Madison user group, for having me this evening at the user group. My name is Shabnam Watson. I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP speaker and blogger. If you would like to connect with me, you can connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I also have a YouTube channel that I've posted some videos there. My background is programming with VB.NET and Visual Basic many years ago. From there, I gradually went to work with SQL Server and then OLAP services, which is I think the great grandfather of Power BI at this point. And then from there, I moved on slowly to just focusing on SQL Server analysis services. And then most after that with Power BI, and then recent years with Synapse Analytics. And since last year with Microsoft Fabric when it was in private preview. Overall, just a data person, and I'm really happy with the Fabric product because, as I'm going to explain in a few minutes, I think it's really makes it possible for a lot of people to just focus on data and less in the plumbing in the back end. Okay, so a few things that I wanted to mention as far as some of the recent activities that I've done, but also more resources that if you're new to Fabric and you're trying to learn about it, there are several resources out there available for you. One of them is the Learn Together series. That the first wave of it has ended. However, all the videos are available for you to go and watch. And these walk you through the Learn modules. So you'll see two presenters walk through one of the Learn modules, and then you can ask questions if you join online at the same time. There's also the right-hand side. So I'm one of the moderators for one of these channels where the focus is to help people become familiar with Fabric and hopefully get ready to pass the certification exam. And then talking about the exam, I actually took the exam a few weeks ago, right after it had come out, and then I recorded a pre and post experience of what it was like and some of the gotchas. So if you've never taken a Microsoft exam before, this is the first time, it'll be useful to watch the video. Just a word of caution, it is not an easy exam, so you must study before you go in to take the exam. At least go through the Learn modules, make sure you have all of that in your memory, in your recent memory, so definitely study for it. And you need to also go beyond the Learn modules for some of the topics, such as Power BI optimizations and things like that. But some people just say, okay, I'm just going to assume I'm going to fail those questions. I'm going to put my energy on the other side. So you can do that as well. But just know that there's stuff that's not in the Learn modules that you will be questioned about. And then talking about the upcoming conferences, as Chris mentioned, Microsoft Fabric is coming up, and he is absolutely right. There's going to be tons of Microsoft product team members and resources and support available. So if you have any questions, this is going to be a great conference. I myself, I have 2 sessions and I have a post-conference workshop. So this is on the Friday, and the workshop is focused on getting people to prepare for DP 600. All right, and finally, one of my favorite resources that I've been using is the Fabric Career Hub. So this is a new website as of last month, I believe, and this is my one-stop shop to go to all of things Microsoft these days, because it has links to the cloud challenges that you can take, and you can get discounts on taking the exams. There's a Learn Together series that I showed you on this page as well. There's an exam cram, there's a practice test. So almost everything I need to jump to, this is the place I go to. And then you can also jump to Microsoft Learn, and we'll take you to the Learn modules that are focused on Fabric. So this is one of my special pages. That's why I have this in all of my presentations now. All right, so now let's talk about Microsoft Fabric. Microsoft Fabric is an end-to-end analytics platform that brings together many capabilities, for example, for data integration, for data warehousing, lakehousing. I'll talk a little bit about the differences, and then all the way to business intelligence with Power BI. It does this as a software as a service. So this is the key. So previously, some of these capabilities existed outside of Fabric, but they were platform as a service. So you had to provision, for example, an Azure SQL database or an Azure Synapse Analytics. In Fabric, they're all together and provided to you in a software as a service. So there's no more those provisioning steps and plumbing in the back end required. All right, so what's happened is that if you're a Power BI person, Fabric is really good news for you, because you will get many more capabilities than you previously had in Power BI service, which is now Fabric service, with the same look and feel. So you have Power BI workspaces, and in the same workspaces, you can get all of these other artifacts or items, is the right word for it. So you can get it. You can have your Power BI report and semantic models, also previously known as datasets, but now you can have a data warehouse and a lakehouse and all of that all in one place with the same familiar security model, workspace access. So if you're coming from a Power BI background, adopting Fabric is very easy to do. If you're coming from the Azure background, so if you were previously working with the platform as a service model, initially some of the things may seem strange to you because those provisioning steps aren't there, but once you get used to it, it makes life a lot easier. So here's a slide. Here's a picture that I've taken from the Microsoft Learn, that you can see the link on the screen. And what this is saying is that basically at the bottom of all of Fabric items or components, there's this one lake. So one lake, think of one lake as the space, the storage space that comes with your workspace. So you have a Power BI workspace, and it comes with some storage, and that storage is in one lake. Now, all of this has been abstracted. So you do not see an Azure Data Lake storage account. This is whatever you put in the workspace is going to be your area one lake. So you can have multiple workspaces, and you can define rules, sharing rules and security rules, and they can pick items from the one lake and read them and write them. And then above one lake, then you have all of these different services that are available to you. Data Factory brings the data integration. This is similar to what Azure Data Factory provided, but it has been enhanced. So maybe the first time you see a slide like this, your reaction might be, well, this is all just Synapse and Azure Data Factory bundled back together, and that's not the case. These services have been reimagined, and parts of them have been truly rewritten. So you have some things that existed before, but you also have some things that are brand new. For example, when it comes to the Power BI, you're going to see that there is a brand new storage mode available that did not exist before. Now, here's another slide on the same topic with a little bit more details. And what this one is showing is that at the bottom of Fabric, at the bottom layer, we have one lake where all of these engines can read and write data. Now, the foundation for storing data in the one lake is Delta and Parquet files, which are open format. So all of these engines can now read and write Delta Parquet files. So you can have a number of people working in the same environment. You can have people who are used to working with a T-SQL. They can use a warehouse that gives you full T-SQL performance capabilities, right? To write to the one lake. And then you can have someone who likes to work in notebooks with Spark, with PySpark and Spark SQL. They can read the same data from the lake. So this interactivity opens up the door for a lot of flexibility across many different projects and developers to all work together, use the best tool that fits their requirements. And then one thing to note is that one of the key factors for Power BI is that the Power BI's engine has also been enhanced so that now it can also read Delta files. Previously, up to this point, the engine itself, which is the analysis services, is what runs Power BI behind the scenes. It could not read Delta. It could not read and write Delta files natively, but now it can. So you throw some data in your data lakehouse, and then Power BI can natively pick that up and use that. So a little bit more on that in a few minutes. So all of this now, the really good news, again, for people who are coming from Power BI, is that this is capacity based. So if you have a Power BI premium capacity today, it is equivalent to having a Fabric capacity. So you can have your Power BI reports and models in there, and you can throw in these other items and workloads at no extra cost to you. So if you have 10 Power BI models and then you add a lakehouse and a warehouse, your overall cost does not increase. So you're paying for the capacity, you're throwing more workload at it. Now you have to monitor it to see if you're overloading your capacity, then you have to scale up. But otherwise, there's no additional cost to you. If you don't have any Power BI capacity, premium capacity, you can sign up for a trial capacity for 60 days. You can try the features for free for no additional cost to you. Now,
Shabnam,
yes.
question. What's your trial number at? How many days you got left on your trial?
It used to be, before Fabric went to GA, it used to be Groundhog Day. So it was resetting every day to 59. And then it started going down. So I was around 30 or so, but since yesterday, it reset again to 59. So I'm back to 59.
So you're telling me it's not a hard and fast 60 days. Is that correct?
So if you read the fine line, they will tell you that at their discretion, they can extend it.
Fantastic. Sorry about
that. Yes. So, all right, let's see, where were we? Okay, so Power BI. Now, a lot of people say, okay, so it's capacity based, but remember that for the Power BI items that you deploy for your reports and models, data sets, you still need those pro licenses. So nothing has changed for Power BI licensing part of it. If you needed a pro license before, you still do. If you always need a pro license to publish, but if you didn't have a premium capacity and you wanted to consume from that workspace that's not in premium capacity, your consumers also needed pro licenses. So all of that stays the same, no changes whatsoever there. What's happened is that now you can have all these other extra items for free. So for you to create a Lakehouse, you do not need to have a Power BI Pro license. That's just tied to the capacity. It's not license-based. And then there are these levels. So there's levels of capacity. So if you have a Power BI capacity, they're called P capacities. If you have you're starting from scratch, you purchase the F capacities. These are the Fabric capacities. And this chart shows you kind of where they are as far as comparison. So P1 equals F64. So let me see if okay. So from P1 and above on Power BI side, you have premium capacities, meaning that if you have a workspace, your consumers don't need to have a pro license. And it's the same thing. So if you go on the Fabric side, you can go below 64. However, anything you create in here, the Power BI parts, you still need those pro licenses for your consumers. Now, the nice thing about the F capacities is that they can be paused, so you can be charged by the minute, whereas on the Ps you cannot. So the F capacities are a really affordable way for you to get started testing features, even if that 60-day runs out and you don't have access to anything else. Okay. So enough about licensing, a little bit about file format. So the standard file format for storing large analytical data in the cloud or for a lot of analytical systems is Parquet. So Parquet is open source. It's if you go to Apache, you can see that there's a Parquet standard there. It's column based, so it stores the data column by column. It's similar to a clustered column store index. It's highly efficient at compressing and decompressing. And it's very good at answering things like, give me the distinct values of whatever, because it's storing column by column. If you look at the Parquet table, now I say table because whenever you store a table in the format of Parquet, it actually splits it up into multiple files. It has an algorithm that does that. This is what you see. So for example, we're looking at the New York taxi green data, and you see a bunch of files with strange names. They all end in Parquet, and you see the success folder here. Now I'm going to show you the delta in a minute, and you're going to see how that looks different. Now, with Parquet, it's not updatable, so you cannot update records. So if you have a table based off of a Parquet files, you cannot say update record where. That doesn't work. So to fix that, there's a Delta format. So the Delta builds on top of Parquet, and it supports additions, deletions, and updates. The way it does this is by providing a Delta log folder. So the Delta log folder keeps track of your updates and deletes, and it goes and marks some of the files, some of the Parquet files as deleted. The phrase for it is tombstone. So they're not actually removed, but they're marked as inactive. And because of that, it supports updates. It also supports time travel. So you can say, show me the data as of 2 versions ago. So there's a certain number of days it collects. There's a retention policy and all that. But this is one of the important features for time travel. And if you look at the Delta folder equivalent of the same data that I was showing you. So this time you also see all those Parquet files, but now there's a Delta log folder. And if you go into the Delta log folder, you're going to see these JSON files, and each JSON file basically has information in it about which files are active and which ones aren't active. So if you have just written this data, when you go into the Delta log, you only have one version, there's going to be one JSON file. As you keep updating, you're going to see more JSON files being created. So all of the engines in Microsoft Fabric natively write Delta. That's their standard. Now, they write data with a certain order. It's called V order. It's the V stands for VertPack, which is the engine. It's analysis services in-memory engine, Power BI's in-memory storage engine. The V order has the data ready to be fed into Power BI in a certain order that Power BI prefers, the VertPack engine. It's a certain order that enables the VertPack engine to work the fastest. So it's like a little bit of cheating there going on, because the Delta files that are being written, they're written ready to be picked up by the analysis services / Power BI VertPack engine. Now, if you have Delta files that were written by a different system, let's say Databricks or another place, right? You can copy them and you can put them in, you can shortcut to them, for example, and use them, but you're not going to get the same performance from them from Power BI because they're not view ordered. Now you can change them into the view order very easily, but by default they're not. All right, and then
You very easily change them to view order.
you can all you gotta do is a copy into. So
oh, okay.
Because all of the Fabric engines by default have the view order on, so you have to, by easily I mean not necessarily, I don't know about the time, right? It takes, so if you have a lot of data, it's going to take time to copy into, but you can do a copy into and then it will view order them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I just wonder if there was a button all of a sudden that I didn't know about.
No, no, there's no button. But
button.
maybe there should
Copy
be.
into button. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. All right, so far we're talking about files, right? So Parquet Delta files. Now, what's a lakehouse? So Lakehouse puts a structure around the files so that it looks to us data people like a database, because that's what we're used to. And it brings with it certain features of a transactional system. So it provides ACID compliance. And that's essentially a lakehouse. So it's the files in the lake in the form of Delta, and then you have something in front of it that lets you query the data without having to worry about dealing with the file-based system entirely. That's the simplest way that I can explain that. Now, what does it look like in Fabric? This is what it looks like in Microsoft Fabric. So here on the screen, I have a Lakehouse Explorer. And as you can see, there are two sections to it. There's a file section and there's a table section. The file section can be any file, so you can upload CSVs there. It can be, it can have folders, subfolders, and you can click on any of the files and say move to the tables, and it will turn them into a Delta file with the view order, and then they will automatically show up. So in order for the Lakehouse to list the tables, you can even copy Delta files into that folder and they will show up. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Now, what are the options to get some data into the Lakehouse? There's low code, no code, and there's code first. So here's where you're going to have a lot of different options, and you have to figure out based on your project requirements and your skill set, and maybe the skill set of people who have to maintain it in future, which route you go. But there's a lot of options. So for the low code, no code, you have the pipelines. The pipelines are like SSIS packages in the cloud. They're the orchestration tool. These are the things you will schedule to run on a regular basis. They can do things like copy data from one place to another. They can do minimal transformations. Then you have the data flows Gen 2. So these are similar to mapping data flows in Azure Data Factory. Also, if you're coming from Power BI, this is essentially Power Query. So you create a data flows Gen 2. To run it, you put it in a pipeline. So the name here is a little bit confusing, at least it was for me when I was starting, because I thought, okay, what a data flow and a pipeline, I didn't know which one was which, but data flow Gen 2 is an item that you put in a pipeline. And then shortcut. So with shortcut, you're not actually ingesting the data, you're querying the data. It's like a pointer to somewhere else. And then for the low code, no code, you have the option of working with the code first. You have the option of working with the notebooks, the PySpark, and Spark SQL. So you can use whatever language you like. There's some other languages also available. Now, to schedule a notebook to run, you can schedule a notebook directly, or you can put it in a pipeline as an activity and schedule it. You have currently you have more options if you do that versus if you directly schedule the notebook. But a lot of these features over time, they're going to merge together. So currently there may be an edge over there, but I don't know, maybe in a few months that may change. So you check the features for that. All right, and then we talk about the data orchestration. So now, if we put all of it together, this is a slide that shows you end-to-end what you can get. So here you have on the top left, we're talking about ingesting. So if you have a data source that supports shortcuts, you can create a shortcut to it, and to the Lakehouse, it's going to look like it's local data. And then for the other data sources, you can either use pipelines or data flows to bring the data in. So that means you're bringing the data in and you're putting it in the workspace. The workspace here is Fabric Workspace / Power BI Workspace. They're the same. So they're stored in the Lakehouse. So once they're in your one lake, then you can further transform them. To do the transformations, you can use the notebooks or the mapping or the data flows. I still want to call them mapping data flows, even though they're not. And then finally, to serve them up, you have a couple of options. So we're talking about the Lakehouse here. Now with the Lakehouse, the Spark engine is in control of all the rights, but to read the data from other tools, you have two options. You get the SQL Analytics endpoint, which is read-only. This is like a warehouse, but it's read-only. So you connect to it, and to the outside tools, it looks like a SQL Server database on-prem. This is created automatically for you when you create a Lakehouse. And then the other option is that when you create a Lakehouse, it's storage mode in direct lake, so that it's going to go directly hit those Delta files. All right, now we have a lot of options to load the database. This is one of the areas that you need to study for the DP600. You may get questions about this. So you have many different ways to load the data, which one to use when. So you can always upload a small file with the Lakehouse Explorer. That's super easy to do. If you have a lot of small files or you have a specific connector that you're looking for, the data flows is the best way to go because it has a lot of different data sources you can choose from. If you are working with a large data source, the fastest performance you're going to get to copy terabytes of data over is with the copy tool, the copy activity in a pipeline. That's going to give you the best performance. And then if you want to do super complex code first transformations, that's the Spark with the notebooks is the option to go.
Hey, Shabnam,
Yes, go ahead.
what are the limitations on the copy tool, or are there any?
As far as data size, I'm not aware of.
I meant like sourcing. Can I go from on-prem using the copy tool, or no?
Not yet, but I think that's coming. I think that's on the roadmap for you to be able to use the gateways, the on-prem gateways. I think it's not out yet, but it'll be soon because support for VNets came out, and I think that the other one is going to follow soon.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so just a couple of slides to show you what they look like. So this is what a pipeline looks like. You get a canvas, you put in activities on it. So here what I'm showing you is that there's a copy data activity, there's data flow. So this is where you copy your data into the workspace, and then you will use a data flow to do your transformations. The data flow itself also can copy the data in. It doesn't have to be a separate step. So these are some of the choices that you have to make. And then afterwards, you can call a notebook to do further tasks. So this is all that I'm showing on this slide. All right, and this is what the data flow Gen 2 looks like. It's essentially Power Query with some additional features. You get a very nice graphical user interface up here where you can do low code, no code joining of the tables and the transformations. But at any point, you can also switch back and switch to the M language, even if you're interested in that. For those of you who are coming from Power BI side, Power Query, if you prefer that, you can see all of that as well. Then you have the steps. And then you can also tell it where to save the data to. So you can send it to certain destinations from here. This is what a notebook looks like. So a notebook has a series of cells. You put PySpark or Spark SQL and a couple of other languages that they can talk to the data in the lake. So the notebook attaches to your Lakehouse, and then you can interact with the tables in there. You can have a mix of code, comments, images in there. So it's a very nice tool for working with your data. I've become a fan of notebooks myself, even though they're code first. The reason for it is because I find them super portable. So if you have going from one project to the other project with the notebooks, I find that to be super convenient. And even sometimes with the PySpark and Spark SQL across systems also, I find them super useful. All right, and this is what the SQL Analytics endpoint looks like. This is basically a warehouse, but it's read-only because when you work with the Lakehouse, the Spark engine is in control of writing the data. When you work with the warehouse, which is like the Lakehouse's cousin, it's full T-SQL. You read and write with SQL, but then Spark will become read-only. That's the thing you need to keep in mind is that if you pick a Lakehouse, your main language to write is going to be Spark, or main engine is going to be Spark. And then if you pick a warehouse, your main language or main engine is SQL. I don't know if that's going to change in future, but right now that's how it is. Okay, and then you get the semantic model. So this just shows you that you get a semantic model. The default semantic model, its relationships are actually defined in the SQL Analytics endpoint. This initially took me a while to figure out, okay, you have a semantic model, where do you create the relationships? Because it gets the tables automatically, but you still have to go and create the relationships and measures. The way you do that is by going to the model tab of the analytics endpoint, SQL Analytics endpoint. That's where it is. You can create DAX measures, you can hide certain things, you can create relationships and hierarchies and so on and so forth. Okay, and talking about the Power BI storage mode. So why is this direct lake so important? Before Fabric, you had direct query and import and pros and cons. So import works blazing fast, but you're moving the data, you're waiting for that processing time. And then on the other hand, you have direct query that you're not doing any refreshes. There's no moving of the data, so it's near real time. But if you're working with a lot of data, the queries can be slow. So pros and cons. And now with Fabric, you have Direct Lake. So with Direct Lake, one thing that I want you to pay attention to is that when someone runs a report, it creates a DAX query. So we're always generating DAX queries to the engine, to the Power BI Analysis Services engine. With the direct query or import, at some point there are SQL queries that are submitted, whether to get the data, to answer the query on the fly, or to load the data. We're always going through a SQL endpoint. But with Direct Lake, you see that's grayed out. It's not doing that anymore. With Direct Lake, the DAX queries directly go to they go to the engine, and then that engine directly talks to the files in the lake, and that's why it can perform so fast. So Direct Lake performs very close to import mode without you having to move the data. So I've had a data set with 1 billion rows, which you just load the data in the lake, you point the model to it, and boom, it works. Drag and drop, everything's working without doing any refreshes, trying to create hybrid tables, aggregations, partitions, incremental refresh, none of that. So it's a great feature to have. And then, of course, there are some limitations, so we can't have something that good without having some limitations. So the limitations are changing slowly. So depending on the capacity that you have, there is a cap of some kind on the number of rows and columns combined, that if you're past that, maybe if you're 1.5 billion, so I don't have the number right now in my head, but you can check the SKUs and they will tell you there are certain limits. Once you hit that limit, it will change back into direct query. Although what I'm finding is that the direct query over a Lakehouse is still significantly faster than the other systems that I work with previously. So it's not necessarily that thing to switch back to direct query. All right, I'm going to stop here for a couple of moments and see if there are any questions, and I'm going to show a quick demo.
Yeah, one note on that, switching back to direct query, you can actually turn that off, and a lot of companies are finding that it will force it to go into direct lake, even above those thresholds, and still get that in-memory performance. You have to test it, so be aware.
Yes. Okay, so I have created the workspace here that's empty, right? So we are in Power BI / Fabric. They're the same. And one thing that, let me actually click on the Power BI icon and start over. Okay, here we go. So in the bottom left, now we have these experiences. So these are just ways that you limit the shortcuts that you see. So if you click on Data Factory, it doesn't mean you cannot create any Power BI items. It just means that it's going to change the shortcuts that you have on the top. So if I go to Data Activator, I see these 2 icons. If I go to Power BI, I see a different look, and that's all there is to it. So let me close this, and I'm going to go to workspaces, go back to this one. So this is an empty workspace, right? And I'm going to go and say more options. And now you can see that I can create all these other items. So I'm going to say Lakehouse. Call this L2. This will create a Lakehouse. Now, the moment you say create a Lakehouse, of course, it's going to be empty. But it goes to work to create that SQL Analytics endpoint and the default model. And then as you add tables, those will be also updated. So right now, if I go back to the workspace, you see that it's being built. The semantic analytics endpoint is being built. Okay, it's built now because that sign is gone. But here we go. There's a Lakehouse and the model and the SQL Analytics endpoint. Now, this model, the way you edit this model is by editing the SQL Analytics endpoint. So let's put some data in here and see what happens. So let me click back onto the Lakehouse. This is our Lakehouse. And I can upload files from files into here. So I can say upload files or folders, or I can start a pipeline or data flows Gen 2. I can do a notebook, shortcuts, and all that stuff. But there's a nice icon here that helps me start with some sample data. So I'm just going to click on that. And this will load some sample data into the Lakehouse. Right, so if I go under sample data set, you see that it loaded a bunch of files into my workspace, and one of them it has loaded as a delta table. If you look at the icon here, see there's a triangle, that means it's delta. All right, so for example, I can go into one of these. So let's see, New York green, and these are small files. So I can say load to tables, new table, and there we go. So I just said this is the super low code, no code option, a one-time thing, where in a minute it's going to show up there under the tables. Let's see, refresh. All right, while it's doing that, so I can see the columns of this table. I can look at view files, and I can actually see the files that are behind it. This is a Delta log folder that I was mentioning. And let's see, here it goes. This is our other table. So all you got to do is to load it up there, and it will turn into a Delta table. And from here, so we are in the Lakehouse, you can say you want to look at this with PySpark. You can say new notebook. This will open up a Spark notebook. The default language is set to PySpark. If you don't like that, you can change it for the entire notebook or for individual cells. So whatever the entire notebook is, for the cells that you want them to be in a different language, you can change it per cell from here. All right, so let me change this to Spark SQL. So this is PySpark. There we go, PySpark. So there we go. So it's PySpark, but and this one is actually, this is PySpark. So with PySpark, you see that it says to get the data, you work with a data frame. It's calling the SQL API of PySpark. It's not Spark SQL, but if I want to run this in Spark SQL, I can copy this. I can say, let that run while it's running. So it's now starting the pool. It's starting the session, the Spark pool, and attaching to it. And it's amazing because this should be done super fast. It's 4 seconds versus in Synapse today, you have to wait like 2.5 minutes sometimes. All right, so while that's running, below it, I'm going to create this one. But for this one, I'm going to change the language to Spark SQL. And now you see it put this keyword up here. This is called a magic. It just tells the cell what it is. So that's the Spark, PySpark. But if I like the SQL language better, I can just go ahead and write it in Spark SQL. Now, this is not T-SQL. Notice that there's no select top number of rows. You have to put limit 1,000 at the back. But this is because we are in a Lakehouse, and if you want to get the full T-SQL experience, if that's what you're comfortable with, then the warehouse may be a better choice for you. All right, so far we are in the Lakehouse Explorer, and we are working with PySpark and notebooks, right? But over here, if I go and switch to SQL Analytics endpoint, I get the same tables available to me. I can create views, functions, and store procedures. These are read-only. There's no updates from the SQL, but they're read-only. So from here, I can just say select top 100, and this is T-SQL. So this also gives you the T-SQL experience, right? And if I go to the model tab, this is what controls that default semantic model. There are a couple of tables that are added. These are views. So these are like the database, the DMVs that give you information about the queries, but they're not actually in the model. Let me just close this one. All right, default. So this looks like it has changed a little bit.
So for anyone who's looking at doing demos in Fabric, be aware that on any day your UI may completely change and have to do exactly what Shabnam is doing here. Going, where did they move that button?
Yeah. But okay. So here we go. So normally there was what I was looking for is, so this all tables has these the DMV queries in it, and along with our two tables. But I was looking for a tab where when you switch to it, it doesn't show the DMVs, but I don't see that right now. Anyways, we're gonna ignore them for now. Okay, so these are the tables, and from here, you know, this is not real data, but if you were to create a relationship, it's just drag and drop, then you can define the type of the relationship and all that stuff. And if you want to create a measure, then let's see, I'll make this a little bit bigger. Let's see what we got. Hold on. Where is...
It's grayed out, Shabnam. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know why either.
There's a new measure button in the top bar, but it's grayed out.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't either. All right, there we go. So I can't show you that part. But this is where you define. So this is where you would create your measures and your relationships. And this will drive the default semantic model, and then you can create your own model as well. So reporting, maybe it would let us create a new semantic model. So this will be the custom one. There we go. So let's see if this one lets me create a measure. And there is some differences between the two. With one, you have more control over when the changes show up. Now with Direct Lake, there is not actual refreshes because data is not moving. However, the schema update, and sometimes you don't want your data to show up in the reports immediately. Perhaps you have a process that takes a while and you want to make sure all of your data is loaded in the lake before they're displayed in the semantic model. With a custom one, you can do that. So you can say, I'm not gonna let it read the new files. And the way it does it is because the refresh actually looks at the delta log. So until Power BI starts looking at your newer version of the delta table, it still uses the previous Parquet files. All right, so let's see here. Yeah, this one lets me create a measure. All right, so we're going to do like a simple. Bring it backwards. Count rows. There we go. So count rows, and then you have your table name from here, and this is where you would create your measures. So one of the limitations right now is that you cannot do this in Power BI Desktop. You have to work in the service. Sometime in future, it may change so that you can also create this in Power BI Desktop. Now, as far as the storage mode goes, if you look, you have this dotted line on the top, and if you look under the advanced, you see that it's hard to read. It says Direct Lake. Again, you cannot change this right now, so you cannot have a mixed hybrid model or composite model, as they were called at some point. So you cannot have some tables in direct query, some in import, some direct lake. Again, maybe this will change in future. So let me see. There was one more thing I wanted to show you. So going back to the Lakehouse. So if I click back on this one, to get some data. So I'm going to go this time and say get some data. So I have different options, and I'm going to say new data pipeline. Okay, create a pipeline. And here you can bring data from all of these data sources. Again, if you're have worked with Power Query, this essentially gives you all of those data sources. So you have many data sources here. You also have these sample data sets available that you can get data from. So I'm going to click on, let's see, the wide world importers and click on next, and then I can see what data is available. So this is connecting to a public blob storage by Microsoft so that you can have some data when you're just doing demos. I'm going to click next just to show you what it looks like. We're going to tell it to load into the existing Lakehouse. And then when you're loading, you have all these options of whether you can send it to the file section if you're not ready for it. If you're ready for it to show up in the model and everywhere else, you can send it to the tables. You can decide how it's being partitioned. So if you're working with large data sets, then it's important for you to consider partitioning so that your queries will be more optimized, your read queries further down the road.
Shabnam, what does partitioning mean for people who aren't familiar?
Okay, so thank you, Chris. So partitioning means that you will, if you don't tell the engine how to write your data, it's going to generate a bunch of Parquet files with a certain algorithm that it has, and it's going to put all of them in one folder. But when you say partition, for example, by date, by year, then it will create folders for each year and it will put the data for that year in that folder. Now partitioning has different benefits. One of the benefits is that if you go to read the data, if you can tell it which partition you're after, then it will just look at the files in there. So instead of looking at 10 years worth of data, maybe you're just looking at 1 quarter, and it will just go and scan those files. So did that answer your question, Chris?
Yep, that's perfect. And then there's a follow-up question online. Is there any way to check the total size of a lakehouse? It's a little bit distracting.
Size of a lake house? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Okay, no easy button. Sorry, continue on.
I don't know, but okay, so maybe in the one place I haven't looked is in the workspace settings, but or in the storage settings.
Go on, I'll look there.
Yeah. All right. So save and run. So now, this creates the pipeline, puts a copy activity on it. If you have worked with Azure Data Factory or Synapse pipelines, it's very similar to that one. You have a source that defines where the data is coming from. You see that this is set to sample dataset because we chose a sample database, but you can pull data from workspace or external. It tells you what the source is, the destination. Previously, this was called sync, but in Synapse and Data Factory, now it's called destination. And then, this is where you can enable partitioning if you need to and other features. So this has run. So now if I go to the Lakehouse, I should see a new table show up, which there it is. So it's Dimension City, and now I can query it. This is the Dimension City. Now, one nice thing here is that hopefully this one will work. One of my other favorite features here is this new visual query. So you can write SQL queries if you're fluent in SQL. If you're not, or you have some coworkers who prefer the visual way of creating queries, there's a very neat visual query editor here. So if I drag dim city here, you're going to see that this is going to look a lot like Power Query. So this is my first table. This is my second table. There we go. And then I can say I want to join these columns together. So I want to merge them. And then this is where I decide which column to which column, and what type of join it is, left join, right join, and all of those options. And then when you do this, it will show you the actual SQL query, although here. I'm just going to pick some random thing. And I'm just joining itself to itself. So let's change that because that's not good. But I'll just pick a random column and it will tell you, it's going to probably tell me there's no match here, right? So when you do this, you can see the SQL. So it writes the SQL for you. And you can also open this up and go all the way to Power Query. And this is the M world if that's what you like to do. And you have the steps from Power Query here. So again, lots of different options. And you're going to find that there's a lot of cases where there's no right or wrong choice. A lot of times, if it's not a performance consideration, it's going to be what's your current skill set, what you want to learn, if you want to learn something new, and who is your team and who is going to maintain it. Those are the factors I consider when I'm sometimes trying to decide what's the best way to load the data and whether I go with Lakehouse or Warehouse. And one of the patterns out there is that you will have a Lakehouse for, in the medallion architecture. So there's a medallion architecture, especially if you're coming from the Azure background. People are used to having a bronze, silver, and gold. The bronze being where you have your raw data, and then you enhance it a little bit, and then gold is finally where you're going to serve it upstream to reporting tools. So if you're used to that kind of architecture, what people are doing with Fabric is that you may have a Lakehouse, and a Lakehouse for your bronze and silver, and then for gold, you may have a warehouse. So you can mix and match these, and you can do all of them in one workspace, or you can put them in different workspaces because you can share across workspaces. You can query across workspaces. So that's a very nice feature to have.
Shabnam,
yes.
There's a question about that, and honestly, I think this is a great question for everyone. It's coming from Travis Whithouse on X, and apparently X has learned how to integrate with streaming software. So way to go, X. Not the same for LinkedIn. But Travis is asking, he set up a medallion architecture. He's populated his raw Lakehouse using pipelines. And his curated Lakehouse using PySpark. He's not sure what to do for that enriched layer. He was thinking about making it a warehouse so he could leverage the T-SQL for updating at a certain layer and not just be stuck with PySpark. Any recommendations or thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I myself come from a SQL background. So if I were to choose, I would go with Warehouse because Warehouse is going to give you the full T-SQL experience. And outside of Power BI, if you have other tools that are querying the SQL endpoint, because it's just a SQL endpoint, and they speak T-SQL, then that may be a deciding factor right there.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay, so this is pretty much the end of what I wanted to show you. If there are any questions, if there's more questions, I take them. Otherwise, Chris, back to you.
Awesome. Let's quick turn to the room. Do we have any questions in the room? Yes, Leonard.
I had a licensing question on the F capacities and whether they include the XMLA endpoint to connect, say, tabular editor to an F capacity semantic model.
That's a great question. Shabnam, did you hear that?
I did hear that. I think the answer is no. I think anything premium Power BI, because the moment you say XMLA endpoint, that's currently a premium Power BI feature capability. So anything below F64 is not going to give you that. That's unless if something has changed between the last time I read it and now. I think that's how it works. So unfortunately not. Now in the trial capacity, you have F64, but if you're purchasing the others, you're below. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't give you.
After Shabnam goes, we'll try it out. So
Yeah. I don't think, because they don't give you the rest of the premium features under F64. You don't get the license. You don't get the non-pro user consumers. There's a lot of other features you don't get. So I'm guessing that's along the same line.
And the reason for my question was, I think you mentioned it was web development only. You couldn't use Power BI desktop to connect to Fabric capacities. So that's why I was wondering, what can you use?
So you cannot develop the model using Power BI desktop, but you can create reports to Live Connect. You can create reports off of it.
Okay.
But the model itself, you cannot use Power BI desktop currently. So a little bit of difference there. You can use tabular, but you can use like tools like with the XML endpoint. You can use other tools, but you have to be F64 and above, P1, F64 and above for those.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
thank you. We had another question in the room.
For CSV dimension files, is there an easy way to make slowly changing dimensions with the value from to, or you have to run it through?
Shabnam, did you hear that?
So actually, can you repeat that? Sorry.
You say for CSV files, is there an easy way to create type 1, type 2 dimensionality, or I guess just type 2 dimensionality without a pipeline, or do you need a pipeline to do that?
The only other option I can think of, I don't see anything just low code, no code. The only other thing I can think of is with the PySpark notebooks. No, it's not pipeline, but I'm assuming that's not where you want to go with that one. I don't know. I don't have another way.
I think you're going to have to write a little PySpark or create a pipeline right together for that. So, sorry. And then we have a question online. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say we have 2 questions online. One, what's the best way to source data from a Lakehouse into workspace A, that's bronze, into a Lakehouse workspace B, silver? Should they use shortcuts, or is there a better way to?
Shortcut. So you shortcut it, and then it will look like local data to the second Lakehouse.
Excellent question. And then the last one, the question is recommendation lower environment parity to a production environment. Any tips on how you can make sure that your lower environment matches your production environment, or that you keep it static?
That's a pretty broad question, so I'm not sure exactly what they're specifically they want to know. I know that the deployment pipelines are available because now you are you are whatever we had in Power BI workspaces. Now you have with Fabric, so you can set up deployment pipelines to move your data across different environments. But as far as if you're talking about data parity between the development and production, I actually didn't think about this before, but with Fabric, you can just do a shortcut from one to the other. You're not actually moving the data. So in your dev, you could query your prod data with shortcuts. So I'm not quite sure if that was a question. Those are things that came into my mind.
All right, good answer. Did you have one last thing you're going to show us?
I was just looking at the pipeline, looking at the copy activity to see if it had any options for slowly changing dimensions, if there was anything built in, but I don't see anything right now.
Awesome,
Yeah,
Shabnam.
I don't see anything, but all right.
Well, thank you so much. Any parting last words for the people in our room here today or online? This is our 10th anniversary of this user group. We've been meeting for 10 years now, and we're excited to have you here to kick this off. And as you part, any parting words?
Well, first, thank you so much. I feel honored to be here. I noticed earlier in the day you had like the 10th year in there. So thank you so much for having me. I would say if you want one resource, it's the Fabric Career Hub, because from that you can jump to everything else. And if you're planning to take the DP 600, remember that it's open book, so you're going to have Microsoft Learn at your fingertips during the exam. But just remember that where it opens up, it's general Learn, it's not Fabric specific Learn module. So just memorize how to get to it from the main landing page or the link, because you can type it in. As long as you don't leave Learn, you're good to have the material on the side. So hopefully that will help you. And again, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much, Shabnam, for coming. We really appreciate it. And
Baker Tilly Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.